Okay. So, hello. Today we are going to talk about linear equations. Specifically, we're going to talk about something called slope-intercept form. And once we talk about slope-intercept form, we're going to write some equations, and then eventually we're going to graph. So we're going to be graphing equations, and specifically we're going to be graphing lines. But we're going to actually start off with just some practice on finding slope from a graph. So I'm going to give you some graphs, and we're going to count rise over run to find the slope. So remember, to count rise over run, you're going to pick any 2 points on the line. So in number 1, for example, I see like 4 points given to me. 1, 2, 3, 4. And notice these points. These points are where the line crosses through the intersection of these grid marks exactly. So here's like these grid marks, right? Like the coordinate plane. It's where does the line cross through the intersection of 2 of the grid marks. So like the line crosses like this grid mark here, but it's not the intersection. Here, it's the intersection of these 2 grid marks, right? Here, it's the intersection of these 2 grid marks. All right, now I'm going to erase some of what I just did because I made a mess of things. But so if I have these 2 points, I'm going to use these 2 points and I'm going to count rise over run. So to get from one to the other, I could go straight up. So plus 2. And then I need to go 1 to the left. Because I'm going to the left, that's a negative. And a positive 2 over a negative 1, that simplifies to negative 2. Now remember, I could also think of starting at this point and I could count down. Well, then I count down to, hold on. So I counted down 2, so negative 2, and then I count 1 over this direction, that's to the right. Negative 2 over positive 1 still simplifies to negative 2. It doesn't matter which direction I count. As long as I do it the right way, I'm going to simplify to the same answer. So number 2, let's take a look at this one. Pick 2 points, any 2 points. I'm going to just go from here to here. You could pick 2 different ones. But if I count up, straight up or straight down, I need to go from this point, I need to go up 1. So that's positive 1. And I need to go to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 to the right, that's positive. So my slope is positive 1/4. Okay, number 3. Again, I can find any 2 points. Let me just use like this one and this one. I'll start here and I'll count down 2. So my slope is going to be negative 2. And then I count 1 over to the right. So 1 over to the right is plus 1. So negative 2 over plus 1 simplifies to negative 2. So my slope is negative 2. All right, number 4, 5, and 6, you're going to notice that there's no points that are written on or that are plotted on the graph for you, right? So you're going to have to find the points yourself. You're going to look for the grid lines. See all these grid lines here, right? And you're going to look, where do the grid lines intersect? Like, for example, right here. Now, where does my red line go through the intersection of these grid marks exactly? That's the points that I'm looking for. So I have this point right here. This point right here. That red line is going through the grid marks where they intersect. If I kind of go along that red line, moving around along that red line, where else? I notice like all the way down here. See that point right down there? That red line is going through the intersection of the grid marks. So I'm going to use those 2 points and I'm going to count rise over run. I'll start down here at the bottom and I'll go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's positive 4. And then I'm going to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I went to the left, that's a negative. And when I simplify this, I get negative 4 over 5. So my slope for number 4 is negative 4 over 5. Okay, number 5. Again, my first step, because the points aren't drawn on there for me, I need to find where does this line intersect the grid marks exactly. And so it intersects, I see like right here. And if I move along the line, I see like here. I see here, here, here. See all those points? Now, it doesn't matter which one I use or which ones I use. I just got to pick 2 of them. Let me change my color. I'll start here, and I have to count rise over run. So I can count up 2. So M is equal to positive 2. And then I'm going over 1 to the right. And so when I simplify that, I get positive 2. So there's my slope. All right, number 6. Same thing. Points aren't drawn for me, so I got to find them. So I got to look really carefully. And I'll even zoom in for you so you can kind of see. But in this case, this red line intersects the grid marks here. It looks like it intersects the grid marks here. Here. So I'm just going to pick two of those 3 points. So if I start like at this one here and then I count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So negative 5 because I'm counting down, and I go over 1, 2 to the right. So negative 5 over positive 2, that can't be simplified, but I do know a negative over a positive is a negative. So my slope is negative 5 over 2. All right, so that was our quick little review with slope from a graph. Now I'm going to give you a formula. So this is what we call slope-intercept form. An equation in slope-intercept form looks like this. Y equals mx plus b. And you're going to notice, like we've been talking about slope. Slope is m. So the slope is m. So this number right here, that m, the number in front of the x, that represents the slope. The y-intercept is the b value. So that's this number right here. That b is going to be a number. And I want to come down here to the definition of a y-intercept. A y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. Let me draw you a little picture. So if I have an x and y axis, okay, there's my x and y axis. And let's say I have this line that looks like this. And so let me label, this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis, right? So now here's my red line. If I want to know where the y-intercept is, where does this line cross the y-axis? Well, the y-axis is here. The red line crosses the y-axis right there. And that is always going to happen at a point. So actually the y-intercept is the point where the line crosses the y-axis, right? What are the coordinates of this point here? This is the point 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0, 3. That's that point. Let me draw another line for you. So let's say my line looks something like this. That green line, right? Where's the y-intercept? Where does it cross the y-axis? That happens right there. What's that point? This is the point 0, -1. I want you to notice that in both of these y-intercepts, we have like 0, something. Because anywhere on this y-axis, the x value is always going to be 0. So the y-intercept is always going to be written in this form, 0, comma, b, 0, comma, a number. And so the b value, like 0, comma, 3, this tells me that b equals 3. For the green line, 0, comma, negative 1, this tells me that b is negative 1. So the b value in my equation, y equals mx plus b, would be negative 1 for the green line, right? Okay, so far we know that m is the slope, b is where we get the y-intercept from, and then the x and the y, those are just the letters or the variables x and y. So an equation in slope-intercept form might look like this. Y is equal to 2x plus 7. Or it might be like y is equal to 1/2 x minus 5. So these are just two equations of what or two examples, of what equations might look like. Okay. So we're gonna start off by giving you a slope and a y-intercept, and you're gonna write the equation in slope-intercept form. So again, slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So in number 1, if m equals negative 2 and my y-intercept is 0, comma 7, my b, that's my b value. So I'm just going to plug in this for m and this for b. So y equals m is negative 2 x plus b, which is 7. So there's my equation. That's an equation in what's called slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Number 2. So now my m is 2/3. So if I think about like y equals mx plus b, I'm going to plug in 2/3 for m. Y is equal to 2/3 x plus the b value here is negative 12. So if I have like plus negative 12, that doesn't really make sense to have like plus a negative. Plus a negative is the same thing as just minus. So this is actually going to simplify to y equals 2/3 x minus 12. That's my equation in slope-intercept form. Okay. So 2 more that we're going to try. Now, what if, again, we're going to use y equals mx plus b. What if my slope now is 0? My m is 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for m, 0x, plus my b value is negative 2. So kind of like before, this plus a minus, that's going to turn into a minus 2, right? Now, let's talk about this part here, this 0x. This means 0 times x. And 0 times anything is just 0. So this equation is going to be y equals 0 minus 2. The x is now gone. When the slope is 0, I no longer have an x. So y equals 0 minus 2, let's simplify that. Plug that into your calculator. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. So this is what my equation would look like. It would just be y equals negative 2. On the other hand, in this should be a 4, sorry. In number 4, if I plug into y equals mx plus b, notice that my m is negative 5 over 3. That's easy enough. My m is negative 5 over 3x. But my b value is now 0. So if I plug in 0, if I add 0 to something, that won't change it. So like adding 0, I don't need that. I don't need to write plus 0. So this is going to simplify to y is equal to negative 5 over 3x. That plus 0 just kind of cancels out. Okay. So now we're going to kind of go the opposite way. So I just gave you a slope and a y-intercept. I asked you to write the equation of the line. Now, I'm going to give you equations, and I need you to tell me the slope and the y-intercept. So just a quick reminder, we're talking about equations in the form y equals mx plus b, right? And so number 1, if I write on top of here like y equals mx plus b, my slope, or in other words, m, is the number in front of the x. That's that 2. So my m is 2. And my b is this 7 here. But when I write my y-intercept, I need to write it, remember, as the point 0, 7. So my slope is 2. My y-intercept is 0, 7. All right, number 2. Again, y equals mx plus b. So my slope is that m. What's in front of the x? It's this number here. So my slope is 1/3. And my b is basically what comes after the x. Now, b in this case is going to be -3. So my y-intercept is 0, -3. So there you go, slope and y-intercept. Look at number 3. So number 3, remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. In this case, the x term actually comes second. It's kind of like b plus mx, right? So I need to first get this into y or slope-intercept form. And I'm going to do that by putting this x term that I highlighted yellow in front of the 1. So this will be like this. Y is equal to, that x term is negative. So -2/5 x. And then think about the 1. Is the 1 positive or is it negative? It's positive, right? So it should be like +1. So there's my equation. Now this is in, I'll write it in another color so we can see. But now this is like y equals mx plus b. So from here, where's my slope? What's my slope? It's this. So my slope is -2/5. And the b value is what do you add to it? So my y-intercept is 0, 1. Okay. Here's a couple practice problems. I want you to pause the video and I want you to try these independently. So after you do these independently, you're identifying the slope and y-intercept of each. So remember, like y equals mx plus b, the slope is m, the y-intercept is going to be 0, b, right? So you're going to pause the video. After you do them independently, you're going to unpause this video, and I'm going to go through each of these. You can check your answers. All right, so number 4. Number 4, my slope is in front of the x, -5. My y-intercept is 0, -2. That's my b. And again, if I want to, if it's helpful, I can even write over top, y equals mx plus b. All right, number 5. Again, you can write right next to it, y equals mx plus b. So my slope is what's in front of the x, 5/4. And my y-intercept is 0, 18. Because what's being added here? That 18, right? All right, number 6. So here's this. Here's this. Number 6 is a little bit tricky. And think about the equations that we wrote before. So y equals 7x. If I think about like y equals mx plus b, I have that x there, and I have this 7 that's in front of the x, so that's my slope. But I don't have a b. What's my b? Remember from before, if my b was 0, so if this were like 7x plus 0, I wouldn't write that plus 0 because adding 0 doesn't do anything for me, right? So my y-intercept here, the b value is going to be 0. So my y-intercept is 0, 0. Okay, number 7, hopefully you recognize that kind of like the problem we did before, this is really not in slope-intercept form. That -2x has to come in front of the 3. So I need to rewrite this as y is equal to negative 2x plus 3. And my slope is negative 2. Again, I can fill this in. Y equals mx plus b. And my y-intercept is the point 0, 3. Hopefully we're getting a little bit better at these. And we're getting better just in time to throw a wrench into things. Look at number 8. So number 8 is another weird one. I don't see, like, part of this is missing. And think about, like, what part is missing? I don't see the x, right? So it's kind of like, if this is like y equals mx plus b, I'm going to rewrite my equation. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to write my equation as y is equal to 9 because there's no x here, right? So this 9 is like the b value. There's no x. Okay, but I need to figure out, like, what would go here. Remember, like we saw before when we were writing equations, if I multiply this x times 0, 0 times x is 0. So this would be like y is equal to 0 plus 9, which gives me y is equal to 9, which was the original equation. So I'm going to erase this. Whoops. Oh, I didn't mean to erase that whole thing. Sorry. But essentially, in slope-intercept form, I have y is equal to 0x plus 9. So what does that mean for my slope? My slope here is the number in front of the x, and my y-intercept is that 0, 9. Okay, and then number 9, this one, y equals mx plus b. Hopefully this one's a little bit more straightforward. So m is 1/4, and the y-intercept is 0, negative 1. There we go. Okay. Now that we are able to write equations from a slope and a y-intercept and write down the y-intercept and the slope from an equation, we're going to take all that we just learned and we're going to translate that into graphing lines. So here's your steps to graphing lines in slope-intercept form. Now, I'm going to follow these steps on the screen, and I'm just going to give you an equation. Let's do like y is equal to 1/2 x minus 4. So this equation is in slope-intercept form, right? So this is like y equals mx plus b, right? Just like we've been talking about. So anytime you want to graph, you're going to, number one, identify the slope and the y-intercept of the line. So just like we have been doing, your m is in front of the x, that's 1/2. And your y-intercept is over here, 0, negative 4. So now that you've identified the slope and the y-intercept, you're going to plot a point at that y-intercept, at that point, 0, b. So I'm on step 2 now. So I need to take this point right here, 0, negative 4. So this is your x-axis, this is your y-axis. 0, I need to start at the origin, and I go over 0, but then I go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's that point, 0, 4. That's my y-intercept. Now, step 3, I'm going to use my slope, and my slope is 1/2, right? So my slope is 1/2. Oh. And I'm going to count rise over run to find another point on the line. But here's the very important part. I'm going to highlight it. We're going to begin counting at the y-intercept. So let's talk about this for just a second. I'm going to rewrite this. If my slope is 1/2, and remember, that's like rise over run. I start counting at the y-intercept. That's my red point that I have here. And I rise 1 and I run 2. That's 1/2. So I rise 1. So I go up 1. And then I run 2. So I go to the right 2. and I put a point there. Now, how did I know to do that? So remember, rise is like going straight up or straight down. The 1 here is positive, so that tells me I should be going up, right? Run means go to the left or the right. And the run value here, the 2, is also positive. So if it's positive, it means go to the right 1, 2. So that's how I got here. And now watch. I can actually continue rising and running 1 over 2, 1 over 2. So from this second point now, I can rise 1, run 2. Rise 1, run 2. Rise 1, run 2. So you can hopefully start to see that these points that I'm graphing are all in a straight line. Now watch, I'm going to show you something crazy. So if my slope is 1/2, that could be like a positive over a positive, right? But what if I had like a -1 over a -2? Remember we said a negative over a negative equals a positive. In other words, I should be able to, here, and I'll switch the colors for this, but I should be able to start at this initial y-intercept, and I should be able to go -1, in other words, down 1, and -2. That's to the left, 1, 2. Is that blue point still on the same line? Hopefully you can see it is. If I keep going down 1, over 2 to the left, down 1, over 2 to the left. So I'm using my slope to find a whole bunch of points on this line. And after I do, now I'm on step 4, I'm going to connect the points to form a line, and I'm going to draw arrows at each end. There's my line. So that is the line. I just drew the line, graphed the line. Y equals 1/2 x minus 4. Okay, let's do a couple more example problems. So number 1, y is equal to 2x plus 7. So use your steps as you go through here. Step 1, you're going to identify the slope, and you're going to identify the y-intercept. So now we've gotten pretty good at that, right? So this is like y equals mx plus b. So my slope is 2. My y-intercept is 0, 7. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to plot a point at the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is the point 0, 7. So I go over 0 and I go up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm just plotting that point. 0, 7. Now, step 3 is to use my slope and think about rise over run. Well, listen. My slope is 2. That's not a fraction. Rise over run, I need like a fraction. So think about how I can make the number 2 into a fraction. If I put that over 1, now 2 over 1 is 2, and now I have a fraction, rise over run. So now I'm going to rise 2 and run 1. Now think about it. They're both positive, so I can go up how many? Rise 2, run 1. Now, I kind of ran out of room. I can't go up 2 anymore, you know? I'm out of room. But remember, just like we talked about last time, to get a positive 2 over a positive 1, that's the same thing as like -2 over a -1, right? So I could go down 2 over 1. And the important part is that I start counting at my y-intercept. There was my y-intercept, that point there. And now I could go down 2 again, -1 to the left 1. Down 2 to the left 1. Down 2 to the left 1. And I could just continue to count down 2 to the left 1, put a point. Down 2 to the left 1, put a point. I connect those points and I draw arrows. There's my line. Okay, number 2, we're going to try another one. So y equals mx plus b. Step 1, identify the slope and the y-intercept. So my slope is 1/3, my y-intercept 0, -3. That's step one. Write those things down. That's going to help you later. Because in step two, we're going to plot a point at the y-intercept, right? So I'm plotting a point at the point 0, negative 3. So 0 in the x direction, and then negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So there's that point 0, negative 3. That is my y-intercept. That's my starting point. I don't start at the origin necessarily. I start at the y-intercept. And now remember, step 3, think about your slope as being rise over run. So rise 1, run 3. And I also want you to think about the signs. Positive 1, positive 3. So I go up 1, 3 to the right. Up 1, 3 to the right. Up 1, 3 to the right. And I could keep counting. Now, think about going up and to the right is the same thing as like a negative 1 over a negative 3, because a negative over a negative is a positive, right? So I could also go negative 1 down and negative 3 to the left. And you're going to notice that these points are all on the same line. Going down and to the left is the same as going up and to the right. There's that line. I connect the points, draw arrows. Okay, number 3. Y equals mx plus b. Same thing as before. So the slope is negative 2 over 5. And my y-intercept is 0, 1. So 0, 1 is right there. And remember, my y-intercept, that's my starting point. So my slope, think rise over run. Now listen, in order for my slope to be negative, either I need to have a negative 2 over a positive 5, or I could have a positive 2 over a negative 5, right? So a negative 2 over positive 5 gives me that negative. And this is the negative I want, right? So I could have a negative on the top, or I could have a negative on the bottom. I can't have a negative on both, because if I have a negative at top and bottom, that actually gives me a positive. So rise over run, if I think negative 2 over 5. If I'm rising negative 2, that means I'm actually going down 2. And if I'm running positive 5, I'm going to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I'm rising negative 2, that means, remember, I'm going down, running positive 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I just did this. Now let me do this. If I start, again, remember my y-intercept is my starting point. Let me actually make this like blue, because this is my starting point. So you know where I'm at. Now I can rise 2, positive 2. So I'm doing this here. I can rise positive 2, but then I'm going to run negative 5. Well, if I'm running negative, that means left. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I can rise 2, run negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those points are all in a straight line. Connect them, draw arrows, and then there's your line. All right, so there's kind of a lot here, but the process is always the same. As long as you know your steps, you'll be okay. All right, so here's 3 more practice problems. Again, like before, I want you to pause this video, and you're going to graph these 3 lines following those steps. When you unpause the video, we'll review them all together. So pause the video now and graph. Okay, so now that you did the graphing, let's go through this together. So number 4. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Number 4, let me get back in here. Number 4, if we have y equals mx plus b, the slope is negative 3 over 4, And the y-intercept is the b value 0, 7. So, okay, where do I start at? I start at the y-intercept 0, 7. So that's right here. Now, if my slope is negative 3 over 4, that's my rise over run. So remember, we talked about negative slopes. In order to get a negative slope, I could have either negative 3 over 4, positive 4, or I could have positive 3 over negative 4. So I'm going to switch my color here. If I do this, if I go down 3, negative 3 over positive 4, negative 3 goes down 1, 2, 3, and then positive 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. Down 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. My other option, remember, is up 3. 1, 2, 3. That's positive 3, but now I need to go 4 to the left. And I actually can't go up anymore, so I'm going to stop there. I noticed that my points are all in a line, which they should be. If they're not, I did something wrong, and I'm going to connect them. All right, number 5. We have y equals mx plus b. So my slope, 1/2. My y-intercept, 0, negative 3. So my y-intercept, 0, negative 3, is down here. Remember that y-intercept, I always think of that as my starting point. And my slope, rise over run, 1/2. I could think of that as like a positive over a positive. So let me switch colors. I could go up 1 and run 2. That's 2 to the right. Up 1, 2 to the right. Up 1, 2 to the right. Up 1, 2 to the right. But I remember, I could also think of this as negative 1 over negative 2, because a negative over negative is a positive. So again, I'm starting at this blue y-intercept. I could go down 1, because that's a negative 1. And if I run 2, that's 2 to the left. 1, 2. Down 1, 2 to the left. Down 1, 2 to the left. Connect. And there's your line. And then finally, number 6, y equals mx plus b. This is the tricky one. And we've seen ones like this, so we can do this. But I have the x here, right? And I have the coefficient of x. So that's my slope. So my slope is negative 2. What's missing? The b value is missing. Remember, if the b value is missing, we're going to say the y-intercept is the point 0, 0. So my y-intercept is my starting point. That's that point 0, 0, right there. And I need my slope to be rise over run. So if my slope is a whole number, remember we talked about whole numbers, you can convert that into a fraction by putting it over 1. So my rise could be negative 2, so I'm actually going down 2. And then my run could be positive 1, so I get to there. Again, my rise down 2, my run 1. My rise down 2, my run 1. My rise down 2, my run 1. But to get a negative 2, remember we said you could also make the 2 positive and the 1 negative, because positive 2 over negative 1 is also negative 2. So I could go positive 2 up to 1 to the left, or in other words, negative 1. Up 2, 1 to the left. So going down and to the right is the same thing as going up and to the left. So up to negative 1, up to negative 1. And then I connect them, and I draw arrows. Sorry, I didn't do a good job connecting them down here. But I connect them, and then I draw arrows at the end to give me my line. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this was helpful, and now you're able to graph equations in slope-intercept form. Have a great day.